What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Chloe and Life is Strange Double Exposure. Will she be in this game? Now, it's at the top of everybody's mind ever since they announced this game. You get the picture, you get the conversation where you get to choose, one or the other. So what I want to do is I want to just discuss generally if I think and if it makes sense and all that stuff. But then I also want to discuss, okay, well, what happens when we're making this decision and we're clarifying what happened to the first game, in Double Exposure? How would that mess things up? And that might change some things, right? So I will say, to start this video out, I want her to be in this game. I genuinely do. I think it makes sense to have her in this game, and we'll kind of walk through that in this video. But I am keeping my expectations very low just so I don't get, completely destroyed, at least in this one aspect. They could maybe destroy me in other things, but when it comes to Chloe, I want to set expectations reasonably so if it doesn't end up happening, I don't have to get, too mad. So I've seen one sentiment from people quite a bit that I want to echo in this video. I've seen a lot of, people don't care if Chloe's in the game or not. They just want Max to not forget about Chloe in this game. And I think that is incredibly well said. Okay, so if you've ever said that, I'm on your side here. I think that's so important. And that is something we've talked about quite a bit ever since this game got announced. One of the things that I care about is the respect for the first game. I am fine with what they're doing, but if you're doing it and you're bringing Max back, a legendary character, a legendary game, then you need to be able to respect the past. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You've got to respect it. And everything that entails. So whether that's Rachel or Chloe. Now, it doesn't mean every one of these characters has to appear, but you got to show the respect for it. So I'm totally on your side. And it's something that has scared me ever since we first saw the debate of who was Chloe, right? Who was that blue-haired girl? And you got to answer, and both of them felt very dismissive. And that is something that's terrified me since we saw that. I think it's terrified other people since they saw it. And that is what I want to, have addressed, I guess, when the game comes out. I hope it's a more detailed questionnaire of what Chloe meant to you. So again, my own opinion, I do want her in the game. Do I think it's going to happen? I honestly feel it's very 50-50. If I have to give just a gut prediction, my gut actually tells me yes. The first thing that pops my head is yes. So I guess I'll run with that in terms of a prediction, but it does get messy as soon as you get to, what I said in the very beginning of this video, when you have to pick, okay? So here's how I'm thinking about this, right? You go into the game, you got to choose what happens at the end of Life is Strange 1. If you choose that Chloe lives, which was my choice. Every time I've ever played Life is Strange 1, I've always picked Chloe. I believe that's the more selfish pick. And not that I think Max is necessarily a selfish character. I actually don't really think she is, although that was that thing in her mind she had to work through in Episode 5, or at least one part of it, right? I chose Chloe. I think a lot of people chose Chloe. I don't know the exact metric breakdown, but if she's alive, I really don't see why she can't be a part of this game. In a very small way, a phone call, right? A Zoom call. We're in the modern age, right? You literally have a video call in the freaking video game. I think you could do that. Or in person. The thing that scares me with those, the choices that we saw, is I'm very afraid that they're going to do the thing where if she survives, you guys just broke up and went your separate ways. And oh my God. I mean, there's got to be a very, very, very good reason for why that happened. You have people pulling up old quotes from the developers of Life is Strange 1. Those two, in a way, were meant for each other, and their destinies always intertwine. In fact, that part is undeniable, right? Literally, the fate of Chloe was always tied to Max from really the beginning, right? But these two are best friends, and you could grow them into more than that, or you could keep them as best friends, right? But they were so freaking important to each other. For them to have survived all of that, for Max to have sacrificed hundreds of people's lives for Chloe, for them to road trip, around the U.S., to just then break it off feels extremely weird to me. So I guess from my point of view on that end, if she's alive, it's so easy. It's easier to get her in this game because why not? But at the same time, if you break them up, then that becomes a bigger dilemma, right? If she's dead, this one's tough because I've seen the theory, and honestly, it was something I thought of right away too, but I kind of want to walk us through it just to see if we're on the same page, and maybe we're not. So if you choose that she's dead, right? And people have said, okay, well, when you go into the alternate universes, this is a good idea, but I feel like the game development would get in its way, even though it really shouldn't. So if you choose that she's dead, And then when you're solving this Safi murder and you go into the universe where Safi is alive, it is literally a multiverse, right? So it's like not everything that happens in that one's going to happen to the other one. It's very possible, and I think it would be a cool idea, that the opposite choice of what you picked would happen in that universe. Now, I really want that, and I think that's a cool mechanic, and I think that's a cool things you can explore in Max's like personal life, but I feel like the game development would get in its way. And let me explain what I'm talking about. You're basically having to make two games that only, like, a person is only going to play one of them. We've heard a lot from developers that actually get quite mad, I guess in the most polite way possible. But if it's a game, say, like Mass Effect, where you choose good or bad, very few people will choose, and I think the statistic is bad, right? They'll make the entire bad path, and very few will play it, and it'll feel demoralizing. But also you have to think of the budgets and the time and all of this stuff. And that's what I'm really afraid of with Deck 9 is, could they make a game where the decision about choosing Chloe, you make one choice in the beginning of the game, if she's alive or dead, and that choice will completely change what happens in this multiverse, right? And I'm trying to play, I guess, devil's advocate, right, against the idea, because I think it's a good idea. I really do want it, but I just am really almost confident that there's no way they're going to be able to do that. Where if I choose she's alive, this whole universe is based on, not, I guess, entirely based on, but there's a lot of mechanics where she's dead, or vice versa. Now, I guess the best way of like meeting in between is like what I said, a phone call, a Zoom call. She comes to visit you for a day and then she leaves. That would be 5-10 minutes. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't take up the whole game. You don't have to think of like alternate things in place of it. Like that's the, you think of Life is Strange 2 with the phone call that like confirms, what's going on with Max and Chloe, versus like if that doesn't happen, depending on the choice you made. And, it's impactful for those that care, but it's not that big of a moment, or at least not that long of a moment. It doesn't span that, that amount of time. It doesn't haunt the game. Like the repercussions of that don't sprawl out. And that is a concern I have with Double Exposure, because there's really no way of getting away from it. You know what I mean? I think actually that's a pretty good example where, if this is a thing that takes 5 minutes and it's in and out and it doesn't have, much ripple effect with the rest of the game, it's not that big of a deal. But at the same time, you're dealing with Max Caulfield. You're dealing with the sequel to the first game. It has to kind of be a big deal. And I think that goes into more of the weeds of people that say, you could do whatever you want, and if Chloe's not going to be in, or if Chloe's like a 2-minute phone call, the spirit of what happened needs to still be there. I don't want her thinking about Chloe like every other second, but like, I don't know, they had a bond, a very, very strong bond that a lot of people wouldn't even believe would be breakable. So like you have to explain that, but then you have to kind of keep Chloe almost in the loop and in the spirit of the game the whole time. Not like, again, every second, but you have to do it, because then it's like, well, you're not really, you know what I mean? Like Max wouldn't forget that stuff. And that's something I've talked about quite a bit, that trauma. We talked about that a few weeks back. I'm not saying I need her to be like a PTSD patient and like the past is just destroying her life 24/7. But like trauma is real. Trauma, like it does happen. And we've experienced the events with Max. So to kind of just forget all of that stuff happened, and you know what I mean? And what we've seen seems to indicate she's not forgetting, or, maybe she tried to like bury it, but now it's coming back, you know what I mean? With the kind of getting dizzy and passing out and all that stuff, and hearing herself back with Life is Strange 1, which I want to throw that in just really quick. Like we don't have too much to go off of, right? But we do have that line. And, like, my theory is that was Chloe. Like, when you hear that line of Max, and then there's the other voice that says Max, I believe that's Chloe. I don't think that's Ashley Birch, but I do think that's Chloe, the character. That gives me hope, because what I do think could happen is some sort of flashback or some sort of parallel universe where people are talking to each other. And that's tough. Because it's like, if Max is talking to Chloe, say like at the very end of the game, right? Almost somebody to wake her up from whatever the situation might be, right? Kind of like what she goes through at the end of 5, where she has to almost like snap out of it. If she talks to Chloe, that would, I think, kind of wrap it up. It'd be an interesting way of bringing Chloe back. It would tie those two together. It'd be an emotional thing, and Chloe can kind of walk Max through whatever she's dealing with. But on the other hand, like, you got to play devil's advocate, and not even devil's advocate. What about the other choice of the game? If she's alive, why would she be talking to you, in that situation? So that makes me think, like, here's the thing. You either have to completely stay away from it entirely, and that would mean no Chloe, or you have to have it, again, be very isolated, where that moment is not going to linger and ripple effect across the rest of the game, right? So if Chloe talks you out of something in the she's dead version, then maybe, and I don't know what you do, because, like, if she's alive, everybody else is dead. So, like, if you're not talking to her in general, you got to pick a different character. Is it some other character that's walking you through a situation if Chloe is alive? If she's dead, maybe it's Chloe. Those are things I think you can mess with. Those are things I think you can experiment with, because, again, they're moments to bring her back. They can be emotional. You can tie the two together. They can work through their stuff or work through Max's stuff. They piece out, and it doesn't have this huge ripple effect with the rest of the game, whereas them designing the game, they have to come up with two entirely different, like, playthroughs, basically, right? That's what I'm trying to avoid when I'm doing this speculation, because I just don't think that's reasonable. I don't think they've made two completely different versions of the game where Chloe is alive or dead, right? So it's like it's more pocketed, and I think that's kind of how this game would be, at least in regards to Chloe. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of Chloe kind of walking Max through a situation, kind of literally like she did in Life is Strange, episode 5, right towards the end. I like that idea. I mean, you could be repeating it, or you could be accused of repeating it, but, whatever. But I don't know. I really want her to come back. I think it's possible that she does, but I will say, again, in terms of prediction, it would be very, very short. So let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments. Do you think Chloe will return or not? Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on. I hope to see you all on the next one.